This is 10X Recruiting, a podcast from MetaView. Let's get after it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 10X Recruiting, brought to you by MetaView. So, Sile, we have had a bunch of people ping us and say, guys, like, we want a 2026 predictions episode. So you ask, you receive. Sile and I have been talking about this for a couple of weeks now. Sile, yours better be good. Mine are terrific. And I think we should do this in like the order of most contrarian to least contrarian. What are your thoughts on that?
For me, I've got a few that are like quite more to do with the recruiting market or like the talent market, I would say, as a whole, and then some that are quite AI specific. So I wanted to mix them up a bit in between. I need to think through that. What's most contrarian here? Listen, I'm just going to do it in the order that I was planning to do it. Okay, I don't care what you say. Stop complicating it.
All right. Well, that may not be interesting to begin with, so we should prepare for that. Well, Sile, let's get into this thing, man. Like, let's start. What is your first prediction for 2026?
Prediction number one, and I think very relevant to, frankly, maybe some people have appeared on this pod, and I know a bunch of people who listen to the pod. Listen, I think it's time to be in the game. We're all figuring out how work gets done. I think there's some incredible talent within VC platform teams, and I think a lot of them are going to figure out how to get back in the game, and they're going to join AI companies mainly as operators. And I think there'll be a big exodus. I don't think this is just talent, to be clear. I think there's a lot of operators who are sort of in some ways on the sidelines in various ways, and they're going to want to get in the game because this is the gold rush. Not just because, companies are going to make a ton of money. I mean, that too, but also just because it's like, what a time to be alive. How can you not be like in... The most exciting thing in the world is to figure out how we're going to work with AI. So like, get in the game and figure out how to work with AI by joining one of these AI companies. I think a lot of the best people are going to be thinking that.
So are you saying, so it's just specifically to like our audience, are you saying that you think we're going to see a wave of VC talent partners leave their VC job and go in-house and work at AI companies?
Yeah. VC talent partner exodus is what I've called this prediction. Yeah.
How do I feel about that?
Well, no, how do you feel? What do you think? Do you think it's going to happen?
Well, Sile, like, some of these VCs pay insanely well, have huge brands. I think maybe what I would say to it is, I do think the era of VC talent partners just giving advice is over. Like, they do need to actually be doing the work. And I think we've seen that over the course of, call it like the last 12 to 24 months. All of my friends are actually like doing real recruiting. Like, Audacious has always done it that way. Some VC firms have always done it that way, but the bigger ones have pivoted hard.
Yeah.
Specifically for early stage companies and early stage investments. So I think that's certainly happening and already happening. Do I think they're going to go in-house? I think we'll see some of it for sure. Like, it's just some of the opportunity to get rich is like so obvious at some of these companies. And so I think it's going to be hard to pass that up. But, life's about trade-offs. I say this all the time, and I've done some like personal reflection on this of like, would I go in-house at this stage of my life? And the answer is no. And there is an amount of money, but it's way more than what anyone would pay for me to trade off time with my kids and choosing my schedule and like, being at dinner every night and not having to check Slack. And when you're in-house, a wise person once told me, when they put a VP or a C in front of your name, they own you. And that's different when you're, in a talent partner role or doing boutique exec search.
Okay, so should we just call this episode "Things That May or May Not Happen Next Year"?
Well, I just disagree with you.
Yeah.
So, all right, let me give you mine. So my first prediction.
Sorry to interrupt, Nolan. Before I guess. Of course, I did not mean I think every single person is going to. I basically agree with what you're saying, which is I think. Notwithstanding some of those things, I think there's a world where like the advantages of being in-house were not so clear versus actually being a talent. And now I think there are really clear advantages in terms of, your advice is not going to be valuable in 10 years time unless you are part of actually figuring out how this is happening, So like, I guess it frankly relates to stage of career for a person. Like, if you're in that stage of life, it's like the time that there'll be a lot of people who decide they need to get in the game.
Yeah, I think that's right. All right, let me give you mine. So my first one is AI becomes the de facto first screen for inbound, and candidates will love it. So everybody knows inbound's a mess. Like with any company that has a brand, I can't tell you, like everybody who I talk to is like, I don't check my buckets. I mean, this is going back to when I was at Google in 2012. It was the joke. We ended up hiring like a team offshore. They couldn't get through everything. AI will help, but the era of the resume as the only thing that we ask for when we have a big brand as a company should be over. It doesn't make any sense. Like how, yeah, I could tell some things based off of the resume, but why not ask for another piece of information while also explaining to the candidate why this is good for them and why they will stick out and why the inbound bucket of the past is no longer the future. And so you should do this. And I think people are going to start getting hired this way. And I think it's going to make candidates more likely to be okay with AI introduced that early and getting them even more comfortable with AI assessing them in other ways throughout the interview process.
Yeah. I think you can totally frame things as a like you're collaborating with the AI to make it clear who you are, like who you are and what you're about. Essentially, it's not even like it is there's an assessment occurring, and whether the AI is part of that is it's very connected. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be the case though. It may well be, but it doesn't have to be. So yeah, totally agree. I think there's a world in probably not by the end of this year, but the generation that's coming up now will sort of this idea that the sort of the whole way we would take in applicants was based on something that was essentially connected to the fact this used to be a piece of paper. It had to used to actually be a piece of paper you'd give someone.
Yeah.
That would just be like, what? It was like, so we'd had all these years where we'd try and almost just keep it almost like as a piece of paper when you could have all this rich media about someone instead. That seems crazy. So yeah, I agree. I think the timings will be interesting on it. I think behavioral change obviously is like incredibly tough, but we got some things cooking on that front, and I think there's exciting things afoot. I agree. You're talking about you said screen. Can you just explain to people what you mean by the sort of when you say screen? What do you mean?
I think it's going to be different. Well, it will be different for different companies and different roles. So I'll give an example. I'll start with like a basic example is like Chipotle is actually already doing this right now for line workers. Like literally right now, the application process, because they're using a new company that's doing this, it's just texting. And they're assessing like how they respond and like, their communication, all that stuff on text. The next level up, I think for tech, for the majority of our audience, is going to be SDRs. So like new grad, given the unemployment numbers for new grads, and most companies aren't hiring them, but some are. Like, why would you go to campus and waste your resources that way? Like, it's such a crazy thing for a company to do when instead you can just institute more friction. And so an example of this would be like, yeah, submit your resume. In addition to that, here is a link that takes you to a one-way dynamic AI-based interview. And it's going to be like 5 to 10 minutes. And what we're going to assess there, especially for like sales folks, is their ability to communicate, uh, how well they get across their point, how succinctly get across their points, those sorts of things. I think AI can handle today, but nobody's doing it.
I think the contrarian thing about what you said is probably not that this will happen. It's probably that people will love it, right? So let's dive into that in a second. The only thing I would disagree with what you just said there, though, is AI is capable of doing it today, yes. But I think a lot of these things, as with everything, when you're truly automating a human process, it's like the last 2% that is the hardest. And actually people like get held back if it can't complete that last 2%. And we're hearing that a lot, where, actually so many candidates that are spoken, you're getting way more, like if you just think of the amount of video media you're getting through your recruiting process, what you're describing is a situation where you get way more video that someone or something, some form of intelligence has to review, right? Because right now it's a piece of paper. You're saying we're going to be some video. And actually the amount of times that the clarity on what the AI should recommend you do with this candidate, it might only be some like low double-digit percentage of times where they flag, hey, I'm not sure what to do on this one, someone should review. But in absolute terms, it's creating a lot more work for the people because they have to then go and watch that video and pass a judgment. And so actually, given you basically, yes, you're in a way you're increasing the friction for the but you're reducing the friction of like essentially having to review how many conversations you have to review, and so people having to spend more time than they were before reviewing videos. So that's what we've heard so far. So I think the question is, can you get to the point where the economics really do make sense and the AI's ability to conduct a high quality interview or ask the right questions dynamically and gauge and assess the responses are such that you don't need this like over investment in human in the loop.
Yeah, so totally agree. And this is why I think new grad specifically is like where you start, because there's going to be a ton of inbound anyways. Also, you can like make more mistakes there. They're also like more AI native. So they're going to be used to like the experimentation in this topic. But with that process, like again, as if you equate it to going on campus, which we used to do, and it drove me crazy even back in the 2015, 2016 era of like, why are we going on campus? This doesn't make any sense. And so if you can, especially if companies are still doing that, which some are, you can remove that piece of the process and then basically just skip the recruiter screen, because AI in my mind is going to stack rank these candidates. And so you're going to go to the first five, like is what's going to happen here. And ideally, we're going to make a hire out of that. So I do think it's going to dramatically reduce the time spent from recruiting and interview teams and make it a better candidate experience.
Mhm.
So I think you're right. That's probably the most contrarian part is like when people actually get hired from inbound, because right now the joke amongst candidates is like, it goes into the black box. No
Yeah.
one sees my resume. Okay. What's number two for you?
Okay, if that is your most contrarian one, then I do actually have some contrarian ones, and we're gonna. Okay, where should we go? I will say I'm gonna flip up my order. We make significant strides. Like the sort of the full version of this is the ATS becomes invisible, and what I mean by that is it's not my job to play with the ATS. It's an AI agent's job to go and fill that shit in. Okay, and so I don't interact with the ATS. My AI agents do. And so this idea, this sort of almost sort of idea, frankly, that certain members of the recruiting team live inside this ATS and do all this work and move this thing around here, change this process. That's not like people are not going to do that. You're going to spend much more time out there in the world actually doing the work as opposed to sort of setting up the system to do the work. And so I think increasingly, the ATS becomes invisible is my second contrarian prediction.
Okay. So this is where I hard disagree this is happening in 2026. Like,
We might be pushing it in 2026, but
okay.
we'll see how far we can get.
I see what you see. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but you're totally right of just like how much bullshit is just like moving a candidate from stage to stage when clearly like MetaView should be listening during the weekly sync and then just do that shit after and say, look good, look right. So like that should happen. But there's still a lot that's associated with that follow-up. And so one of mine that's upcoming is I'll talk about this. But like, say we say, okay, yeah, Sile, we want to move forward to an on-site interview. It's
Yep,
not like, oh, automated, like send an email. Like you got to get on the phone. You got to build the relationship.
exactly.
Yeah, but like that's where I don't think you're removing that much work.
I'm not saying that it is removing that much work. To be honest, I'm just saying that it's just it's it's not that's the work about work. You know what I mean? So people are going to do the work, which is calling the candidate and keeping them warm and keeping them engaged. And yeah, I'm going to be obsessing over my talk track for that, and maybe having that one extra minute with the hiring manager to clarify what does he or she think I should be focusing on in that call. I'll do that for sure. I just won't have to make sure it's logged. Because that's just
Okay, I like it. All right, that makes sense. And I'm aligned. Like the work about work is dying for sure, and AI is going to help kill it. Got it. All right, I have a 2A and 2B. So, okay, so 2A is 90% of sourcing will be automated by the end of year 2026. So I
cool.
used to spend 20 to 40% of my week literally just like looking for the right candidate on LinkedIn. Like that was a huge chunk of my week. Obviously, like we've launched a tool, like MetaView's tool on this is so gangster. And this is part of the reason like I have conviction on this. I don't think I'm ever going to go to zero. Like maybe I can see it, but I still like, I don't know, like this is probably like the Waymo analogy of like, if my Tesla or Waymo can drive me everywhere, will I never drive? Like I'm probably going to drive sometimes. Um, so I see like a huge portion of that being automated by the end of the year as AI and tech gets better. Now, 2B is outreach automation will be an unmitigated disaster. Okay. So everyone thinks sourcing and outreach are the same thing, and they're not. They are entirely two different things. Being able to find someone based off of a spec that I got from a hiring manager on LinkedIn is completely different than getting that person to get on a call with me. And I think the amount of AI slop we are going to see from outreach is going to reach unprecedented levels. It's already bad. I think it's going to get way worse in 26, which means there is significant alpha for intentional, custom, thoughtful messages to candidates.
Love it. The reason I'm trying to find a message from someone who messaged me basically a similar sort of thought. I just want to be extremely frank with you. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars with like sourcing tool names and other natural language search tools. I don't know how you did it. Seriously, you guys out engineered every single one of those players. It's absurdly good. The future, in the future, the sourcer is eliminated and you focus on elite candidate experience with outreach and follow up. And the thing that I thought was really interesting about that is exactly what you described. And I was honest, this was sort of, I learned this through him's message, actually. He has them separate in his mind. He sees his ability to do this elite outreach. He's very AI forward. He is very like, cut the shit. This is going to replace a lot of my work. He's not like, he's not coping by saying, hey, outreach is like I'm not saying he's definitely right, but the fact is in his head, he's like, no, one of the things I need to be really great at is getting people on calls and doing great outreach. And that's actually what I want to spend time focusing on. And MetaView is going to help me get there. So he's like very, very aligned with you. I don't think that, yeah, I basically agree. Like we've seen this with the sales, right? Where these
Exactly.
AI SDRs absolutely sort of spam people to shit and you can get some initial spike in people, but you sort of scorch the earth and you can ruin a reputation. I don't know. I wonder whether I definitely know MetaView has learned a lesson on that. So yeah, but I can imagine people loving the idea you can press one button and a million emails get sent to people and almost see where you go from there, and that
This is
wouldn't be a
every
great
early stage
experience.
founder style. This is every early stage founder who just raised money, who hasn't really built a team before, is going to be like, oh my God, I can just press a button and it sources and does the outreach on my behalf. Like it sounds so good until you've actually like been in the arena and doing that and seeing how it pisses people off, or even like being thoughtful about your own inbox and how stupid the outreach I get. It's so bad. So I think it's going to get worse.
And you get like a sort of sample bias in the people who reply, right? It's because if it is bad outreach, actually only maybe not the best candidates reply, and so you think, oh, this is all terrible. So you sort of like actually get into a bit of a doom loop if it goes wrong. Basically, did you ever do like any form of online dating?
Literally never. I've never even seen an online app. I met my wife when I was in high school.
Okay, cool. Well, I've heard that some people, when they did used to do this, obviously you have like this sort of swipe right, swipe left concept in some of these apps. And like there were some people that would adopt the strategy of, well, I'm just going to swipe right on every single person. So basically, I'm going to say yes to every single person that I come across on this dating app. And
God.
then I'll just wait to see who replies. And then from their reply, I'll decide whether am indeed interested in them. But like, let me just get the pool down to the people who I know are interested. That's sort of what could be the problem with outreach is if you have a big button that says basically swipe right on everyone on the planet who matches this JD in the most basic way, and then go from there. And you just got this big cluster of fake matches, as it were. I can imagine that happening. You're right.
But you nailed it on the selection bias, right? Which is like, I think actually really good talent, like they roll their eyes at it. And then I do in Superhuman, I go Command K, mark as spam, and then
Yeah,
never, like never hear from you again.
yeah,
So I don't know. I do think there's an aspect here which I didn't put in my predictions, but has been coming up in conversations with friends. We just talked to John Bishke earlier this week. That pod will launch soon. But John's prediction is like the candidate's agent is going to talk to the company's agent, and I'm still like working, like my brain hasn't fully connected the synapses of what that looks like. Like I need to see it in order to believe it, but I can kind of squint and be like, yeah, like for really good talent, like how good you build your AI agent, maybe like a signal in the hiring process.
I think it's inevitable, but it's little by little, and it's one of those things you'll look back on and in the future, and it will sort of like slowly realize that actually things are fundamentally shifted. I think a really, as I've sort of hammered on a bunch of times, it's obviously really good to have an analogy of this as a human. Some people have executive assistants, and you sort of sometimes you tag in your human executive assistant to go and handle certain emails with you, do the scheduling. Someone's got a question about whatever, my dietary requirements before I go to this meeting. My EA knows my dietary, so she'll answer. And so, piece by piece, it's all the person on the other side wants is the information, so they can get on and decide. And so I think you can get into these very low stakes exchanges of information, and every human on the planet will not have to spend time on that low stake. And then gradually, you'll just get these higher stakes, more sort of specific things that you trust the AI to do. But I don't think that's a 2026. Holy shit! Look back on the year and it's totally changed. I think it's just like minor sort of changes. I actually think that was one of my. I don't want to sort of spend too long on it, but your point around the screening, I think that's a really interesting world for essentially AI avatars within the recruiting process, or like personified AI agents. Is maybe it's not the screen, because that's when you're starting to develop the relationship. Maybe it's some of the other state. Maybe it's the in between. Maybe it's when you sort of have a question as a candidate during the process, and instead of waiting for the recruiter to get back to you in 24 hours, you can just have like a high bandwidth conversation with an AI. And that's totally that's like totally win-win, right? Recruiter didn't have to spend time managing their inbox and answering those questions. Candidate got the information they needed right away. It's like not even debatable that that's better. So I think that might be the areas that you get. It's not as juicy a prize, to be honest, but it's so beneficial to both parties that I think that's really interesting. The other thing I'd say is, if you see these companies like Sierra AI, or a lot of these companies that are helping you build other like more customer support bots, or even these virtual SDRs, they expect their customers to spend 2 to 4 to 6 weeks maybe training that avatar to be able to represent the brand appropriately. I think that's probably the pain, frankly, that some people might have to go through, is when they turn up and say, great, let's get an avatar to do this thing, without appropriate training and context to do it the way that you want it. It will do it worse than your team. And it will do worse and at scale, but a much larger scale. And so there's like more of the worst thing. So I think that's what maybe hopefully people don't have to touch the stove on that one and learn that too much the hard way, which I think is why starting with some of the like lower, less junior, more junior roles, it makes sense. But I still think there's a risk there that it's really worth it to invest the time in training these things. And I think as an industry, we'll need to figure out what that means.
I also think it's just a great experiment. You know what I mean? It's like you're going to learn so much from just like running that experiment, that like you're crazy if you're hiring new guys and not doing it. Like just the amount of learning you and your team are going to get from like opening up Pandora's box on that, I think is going to be beneficial for everybody.
So the prediction is there will be a backlash against human data extraction. What I mean by that is there are these really high growth companies, and the big foundational labs are sort of paying for this, that are essentially paying people to do human like reinforcement learning for the model. So essentially like labeling data like, hey, listen, we're looking for an accountant. We're going to pay you tons of money per hour to essentially train our AI how to be an accountant. And that's happening across every job you can imagine. And I think there'll end up being a backlash against this. I think it's sort of like a prisoner's dilemma situation, which is, hey, if we like give the AIs all of our sort of expertise, then they'll do more and more of our work. Now, I obviously am optimistic about this, and that will be a good thing, because if the machines can do it better than us, we can focus on other things that machines can't do. And like, that's the way things are going to go. But I do think that there will be some backlash, and whether that's like regulatory backlash against extracting data, like, paying one accountant to give the knowledge of all the accountants on the planet to an AI, so that all those accountants no longer can do that thing. Like, there's an interesting moral quandary there. And I think there'll be some form of backlash, either regulatory or just like in terms of protests and this sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So super interesting, because yes, I'm going to Vegas next week. And I was like looking up places to golf, and I'm like, best places to golf, which I still Google search, which, kind of makes me a boomer. Anyways, the first website.
You're crushing it now, man. That's like Gemini's.
Yeah, right. So maybe I'm back. Anyway, so I go in there and like I go and try and copy and paste. Like it was like the third class. Like, oh, interesting. Copy and paste. And it's like, you cannot copy on this website. And I think the reason why is exactly what you're saying. Is like the author of the website knows that AI is scraping And they're like, nope, no longer. You can't. So I literally couldn't copy. I had to go in and like type it in into my tab.
Dude,
I'd never
screenshot
experienced that
it.
before.
Screenshot it. You got character recognition, these AIs. Come
Oh,
on,
it's like a
man.
one core. Anyway, so anyways, long. Okay, so that's where I agree with you. I fundamentally disagree with the prediction though, because for people to band together, they have to like realize it's happening. And I think they're going to realize it's happening when it's too late.
I guess my prediction is people will realize, and like I think I'm not a sort of a detractor of this practice, just to be clear. I'm just saying I think these companies are getting quite large and they're sort of staying a little bit under the radar. They're not really telling the world this is exactly what we do. And there's a reason for that. And at some point people are going to sort of, the truth will out, you know?
Okay. So that's interesting. So I'll give you, I guess this is kind of contrarian. My next one is very related to that, which is I think the next era of social unrest comes from white collar tech workers.
Social unrest. You think they got that in them?
Oh my God. Well, let me tell you yes and why. Why is because the salaries that tech companies have given out historically have recalibrated the expectations of a gigantic populace. And now, as companies have, and it's not just AI, right? Like, so it's not because of AI, but it's like, a couple things, right? In 2022, obviously, like ChatGPT came out and companies got leaner, right? Both things were true. Interest rates got higher, companies had like, fewer headcount, all that everyone knows. But there just is objectively more leverage when you're applying AI in the ways that we do every day. And so you don't need as many people to do the same things. Now, will companies have more or less heads? I think it's objectively less. I've been saying this for a couple of years now, and I think we're finally starting to see it in the data. But the second order of that is that you're going to have this huge subset of people who have added value to companies that no longer, and they can no longer add value in the same way. And they've been recalibrated to these extremely high salaries
Yeah.
and equity offers and benefits and all this stuff. And now they're going to feel rug pulled.
I can't figure out the way I think it's going to, if that's going to be, so basically what is literally happening most frequently now, I would say, is people are doing less like graduate hiring and like, and literally if they're sort of like having to sort of frankly like maybe like cut part of a team, they tend to be keeping the more tenured people, which obviously makes sense in a bunch of ways because they're more experienced in this way, but they are like, you can be an exception to this, but as a rule, they'll be less AI native. So I think there's this really interesting, like, there's something also interesting going on in terms of, well, will the comp go down? Because it seems to be people are concentrating on almost retaining and keeping the most senior, most highly paid talent, and hoping that they figure out how to orchestrate the AI. So that's I don't know. It's not happening now. I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, okay. So my next prediction, we'll talk about what you're talking about, which by the way, Sile and I have not shared predictions beforehand.
No.
But what I'm specifically saying is that headcount is shrinking at companies. I'm not talking about comp. I'll talk about comp later, but with headcount shrinking, meaning those people high earners historically now zero. And so when they go back into the market and they're looking for similar jobs, and now because like their skill set is no longer valuable inside of tech companies, they have to go to another segment of the economy to where they're going to get repriced to market in a very brutal way.
And you think it will cause, what type of unrest do you have in mind?
I mean, we've already seen it. Like Mandami was just, elected in New York. And I think a big part of the reason why is like these jobs are no longer they're not proliferated in the same way as they were for the last decade. They're so much harder to get. And I think there is economic frustration. And I think we're going to start to see it manifest a lot more. So I think you're going to start to see like more of those types of candidates getting elected. I think you're going to see um, people get really upset with like what tech companies are doing in their neighborhoods. So like, no, we're not going to give tax breaks anymore for you to open an office here because like it's a data center. You employ 25 people and you're going to take all of our power. So I think those are the sorts of things that we're going to start to see.
Yeah. It's I don't know if you have this, but I'm sure you do, like in the US. But in some cases, when you have like state-owned land that they want to build, let's say apartments on top of, uh, you sometimes get a scenario where you have to, as the builder, as the sort of the private builder of that apartment block, you have to sort of commit some of it to a library for the local, part of it has to be a school. You have to also like contribute to the school being built or the library being built or things like. I wonder if we'll end up with a lot of that on data centers as well. Like, okay, you're going to build a data center. This is for AI. You have to sort of like do this thing that's for the general people's good, or perceived to be for the general people's good. Maybe that will be,
I
and that will
like
only happen when people force it, obviously. So you need the sort of, whether it's unrest or whether it's just democracy in action. I don't know. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. What's your next one?
Okay. I think we will start to see the emergence of job titles that are agent managers. So, i.e., you are a manager, you are on the management track of like within levelings within a company. You have no human forms of intelligence that you manage. You purely have artificial intelligence that you manage. I think that's going to be a very like this is the decade of agentic AI. To get the most out of it, you need to embed it into your organization and orchestrate it. And there are some people who are better at that than others. And those people are going to be agent managers. It's going to be a high status management role.
I like it. And, if we just go back to sourcing, right, which was one of my predictions earlier, I could totally see one person in charge of agentic sourcing, right? Because like you got to calibrate the agent, you got to make sure that it's like getting all the right inputs. You got to be searching for new software that's or new agents rather that are launching, and so you're kind of like the captain of like one of those ships. I can totally see that. I like that one.
And like, just as like, I mean, if you ask any people manager or anyone who has an opinion on people managers, like what's the number one most important skill? I think fighting it to be number one would be like communication. How good are you at communicating? What separates you might be a mid IC, but you could be an elite manager. And the thing that'll make you elite is communication. You could be an elite IC and end up as a mid manager because you're not great at that communication. And it's very similar with AI agents, like literally that ability to understand where an agent has gone wrong, communicate to it in frankly a very like uh, usually quite a human way, but sort of it's almost like a new emerging skill, obviously, how to communicate to AI agents and build up sort of almost like what's akin to rapport. So you sort of get each other over time. I just think that's going to be a real job. And again, some people will be better than others. Sourcing is a great example. Like I imagine a world. One thing that's lacking in a lot of agentic products at the moment, including MetaView, to be fair, is almost like perf review of these agents. Like, hey, this agent is out there sourcing for people. Like, has it found good ones or not? And like, where's it going wrong? And do I need to get in there and coach it? And it's like, hey, you keep on getting this wrong on this thing. Like, let's add this to your sort of bit of context. So you never get that wrong again. Okay. And that is literally, again, the analogy with how you manage humans is like very strong. That is literally what people will do. At the moment, we don't have enough of almost the heads up display. And of course, perf, when you do it with humans, is terrible, right? You talk to them like once every half a year or something, or this sort of thing. Whereas if you literally have like a fire hose of insight you're getting about how this agent's performing all the time, and we can work out how to help you visualize that and understand what to do to improve how it's performing, then you can obviously make it super effective. So I think that's going to be a really cool job of the future, and I think we'll start to see it this year.
That's really well said. I really like that. That's super well said. And to be more poignant on it, 2025 was the year of just like agents. 2026, what you're saying is it will be the year of agent performance. Like you're actually going to get value from this thing. Because like most agents in 2025 are dog shit. And no one really says that. They're like, oh my, they're all forward casting.
I'd say I think it's just unpredictable. I think that's what I think, and your ability to exercise control and make it so that it's going to do a good job for you is it's sort of like a little bit whimsical. Like, how do you figure it out? And sometimes it works. Yeah. I agree with that. But I still think there's like some pretty magical things some of these agents have done. Like, obviously my team uses coding agents like all the time, every day. And it's not because they're not dog shit.
That's very, very well said, which is like, especially for like coding is a great one. Even sourcing right now with what you guys are doing is like real value. For the most part, it's been all hype. I think next year will be about performance and substance.
There's one thing that's quite interesting right now. we see it in our data, and even like I've started sourcing a lot more since we launched our agent, because it's a much more fluid way to do it. Is you sort of can get, sometimes you might have like you've been working on this, you're having this conversation with it to find people. It's not going the way you want it to. You just start a new one and sort of start again. That's like the best way to sort of like is to just sort of start again on it. So I think it's quite interesting to think, how is that going to persist, that you just think, fuck it, throw that away, I'm going to start again, like new, almost like new context window, and let's start again? Or do you start to almost think of, hey, this agent who I've got working on my AE searches, I'm like invested in making this a success, and like when it doesn't work out, I'm going to like address that and make it, because it still has a lot of context that you built up over time that you want to maintain. So it's going to be interesting to see how that literally, like almost the analogy, develops over time.
Yeah, I like it. All right. My next one. 2025 was the year of $100 million offers for researchers. 2026 will be the year to where crazy things happen for non-technical talent. So we've already seen, like, I'm basically piggyback. I was thinking about this, and then the Growth by Design news happened. So for those that don't know, Growth by Design was acquired by Cursor, acqui-hired, whatever happened. I don't know how much. All I know is that, like, I know Adam, love Adam. For him to disrupt his lifestyle that he had, which was dope, to go work at Cursor full time, had to have been pretty lucrative. And so I think and that's like, very respectful, nothing but positive things to say about that whole team. But like really what happened there is like they're acquiring Adam and Mike. And the reason why they did that is because there's no one else like those two guys on the planet. Now, those guys are not designing anything that has to do with the LLM. And I think you're going to start to see that in other functions of like this notion that, oh, well, this is our cap on comp, or like, no, you're going to start to see creative again with the very top of the food chain. Kelly, my podcast host on HR Heretics, talks about back in the day at Yahoo, they used to give away like Jeeps as part of the sign-on bonus, which when I say it out loud sounds like from another, like it feels like Jurassic Park, of like, that's like another world.
Yeah.
But I can see it happening again. I really can, because how do you get people off the sideline to come do the thing that they're so uniquely good at? And it's not just build the model, because one thing is building them, then we got to go sell it to people. Then we got to go grow it. Then we got to go build the rest of the team. And so when you start to think about it, you could start to see the New York Yankees, or like, make me throw up right now, the Los Angeles Dodgers of tech companies. And it's not just like, we need a great pitcher and a catcher. We need elite at every position on the field.
Yeah.
And those people have extreme agency today. And so how are you going to rip them out?
Yeah.
And I think you're going to start to see crazy shit.
Yeah, I think that's like the same theme as my point on the VC talent partner exodus, to be honest. Maybe know the market sort of better and where those people are coming from. But yeah, I think it's like the same gist. I think, yes. And it's purely because I think the next 2 to 4 years are just an absolute race. Like we are determining who the sort of platform generational companies of the future are over the next 2 to 4 years. And the prize is so big that not having the best person in every position, to use like the baseball analogy, is like, it's not worth, like, you might just don't take the risk. Like, do not take the risk. We've given you, $1 billion. Like, frankly,
Exactly.
you only need to break off a little bit of that to really change some very, very talented people's lives. So yeah, I see that for sure. I wonder whether part of this is like who is like actually the real brains behind like the winning Formula One team, right? It's obviously not the driver, right? The driver is just the person who has to like make sure this thing lives up to its potential. This car that are
It's Helmut
far
Marko
smarter.
at Red Bull. I know exactly who it's Helmut Marko at Red Bull. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like far smarter people have put all this energy in. I mean, if you obviously think about, and through the fullness of time, cars never used to be a thing, right? They're just incredibly like these inventors essentially who create these amazing vehicles, and they're just like, it's so, but the highest paid person, of course, is the driver, because they're like, well, we've put so much effort in now. We've invested so much in, building this machine. In the case of like AI, that's like training this model. We invested billions and billions and billions. Can we really afford to have a VP of sales who isn't like absolutely the best we can have, given all of this cost we've sunk into it. And so I think that's one thing, that's one reason that drives those really high, I think, like comp for non-technical people. And then the other thing I think is just culture. I think like having a company where everyone knows, if you end up resenting the people who are getting like so much money, and if there's not like some like bringing up of everyone else as well, if there's not like a rising tide for the other people within that organization, you can also have a negative culture. I don't think that's like driving it, to be honest, but I think it's at least it it will exist if you don't sort of also compensate other people really well.
That's really interesting to think about it that way. I would actually take it a step further, which is, Netflix talked about this in like the early 2000s of like, we're building a sports team. I now think like that is now widely shared amongst a number of mega large companies. And when you build a sports team, um, it's just basically like you're performing or you're not. And I don't give a shit how much money we paid you. We will execute you in the middle of the night if you're not meeting expectations.
They won't do that, but yeah, they'll.
That's what's happened. That's what, dude. That's Brandon Ayuk. Like, I don't give a shit how much money we gave you, and sunk cost. I talk about this all the time with my wife and my kids because I feel like the best people on planet or the best business people on planet Earth do not have sunk cost. And so it's like, I don't,
They don't have the fallacy, or they
essentially,
don't have some cost.
so what I mean is like we went and spent a ton of money to get the absolute best person. So that's my prediction. I think the second part of the prediction is going to be like, we will move on unbelievably quickly. We don't have this like the sunk cost of like, oh, well, we gave him that money. Like, no, like that's going away as well. Is like, nope, we will rip you out and bring in someone else because we know we can do it now because now we're no longer afraid to spend the money.
Yeah, I think obviously with the $100 million comp packages for the researchers, I think there was even, I don't know if it came from Zuck, the line, but I think a lot of people in the industry were describing it in the words of like percentage of market cap is negligible. So like it would be irresponsible not to have 10 of these people, 20 of 100 of these people. There's apparently only 150. I guess that's the interesting thing. Like the researchers, if you listen to like these AI researchers, they'll basically tell you there's like 150 to 200 people. Everyone knows their names within the industry, like who are the people that you want who are going to like make the next breakthrough or whatever it might be. And so it's a very finite list. I guess I wonder if it's as well understood. That would be the thing that holds it back, I think. I don't think it's as well understood who are like literally what is the list of the best people at these other things. I think maybe it's more opinionated there. So maybe I don't think it'll go as far, but I definitely know the stakes are high, and when the stakes are high, obviously you'll see that come through in comp.
Yeah, which was fun. You got any more?
I got one more. It's more AI sort of specific than recruiting, but I think you will really start to see the foundation labs. So, OpenAI, Anthropic, obviously Google already do this, what I'm about to say, but OpenAI and Anthropic really move deeper into applications. So if you think about right now, OpenAI has one really popular app on the consumer side, one popular application, ChatGPT. Sora is like emerging, it's getting more popular. That is their game. They're going to go like all in on trying to build that consumer application, I don't know, marketplace, but like suite. And I think that sort of the space for Anthropic is to do that on the business side. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see like what parts of the business application layer do they really start to play in. So yeah, I think there'll be like very significant moves into the application layer by those players.
I've been hearing other people say that, and for whatever reason, when
no,
you just
no, that is a completely novel,
completely new thought. But
you probably heard it from me. You probably heard it from me.
Yeah. What I was about to say was, it finally that analogy clicked in my brain for Google. Like Google, think about all the apps now you have in your G Suite, right? From Gmail to Docs to Sheets to presentations. For whatever reason, I hadn't thought about it the same way for LLMs. Like people keep saying, I'm like, okay, yeah, like I heard about the Pulse thing, like, oh, like kind of seems like a party trick right now. But like obviously, like by like no, they're gonna build apps because they have this one, they have, they have one piece, which is the LLM, which is unique to like them. And then the other piece is they have unique data on you because you're just vomiting your entire life into this thing all day long. And so, like, yeah, my imagination probably isn't good enough to think about like what apps are going to be the killer. That's why I'm not a product person, turns out. But obviously, like if Google did it for the G Suite, and it's like part of my everyday. I'm looking at my Google Doc right now.
Google hasn't done great in enterprise overall, but like Gmail is like pretty
It's a
popular.
huge
Um,
business. It's
yeah.
Google has a huge business.
Yeah. But really what that was the technology advancement there was before that point, you wouldn't have email in your browser. It was just they had like managed to like render and manage your inbox using JavaScript on the browser. It's very similar to Figma, like actually doing all this very intensive work in the browser was like the innovation there. But sort of from a form factor perspective, it was the same. And so I was some people talk about Gmail almost like an invention. It's like, well, it looks very similar to what it used to be. It's just on the browser. So I don't know about that, but whatever. The point is that was what was the sort of exciting thing was there. The difference with AI and the reason it's riskier is because I would expect them to take a very different approach to the application. I wouldn't expect it to be, hey, we've now done a version of that. I guess ChatGPT has done it with OpenAI have done it with the browser and it looks like very roughly similar to other browsers, although with some obviously cool features. But I just wonder whether it's more going to be baked into the interaction you have with the AI, and like a little bit more invisible, right? Like, hey, if I'm having this conversation with Claude and clearly the output is I'm going to email one of my team, do I just fire, like, how do I just instruct the agent to go and do it? And it's a little bit invisible. But the point is that is now my application for emailing my team. It's just it handles it for me and puts it in front of me and this sort of thing.
Yeah, like watching Slack channels and watching emails, like making recommendations to you on how it can help. Like I can start to imagine some of those things, but like where it goes, I mean, I think it is going to be wild in 26. That's all I got, Sile. So if you're listening to this, if you've made it this far, first of all, unbelievable. Um, second of all, it's the longest episode we've ever done.
Yeah.
Second of all, please disagree with us. Like, I would love to hear where people agree or not agree. And then the next piece is like, what are we missing? What do you guys think is going to happen in 2026? Because that's what I'm really interested in hearing is like, all right, we all got different opinions on where the world is going. We're in the middle of a platform shift right now, which is the biggest in humanity. So I want to hear what you guys have to think. But honestly, Sal, what a 2025, man. What a blast.
Yeah, great year. Best year of my life.
Wow, me too. I love it. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon.